I want to tell you the story of how my own daughter stole everything from me. 42 years of work, gone in a single morning. And I want you to know what happened next, because you might not believe me when I say it was my 15-year-old grandson who saved me. Before I begin, please like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what time it is where you are right now. It helps more people hear stories like mine. It started on an ordinary Tuesday. I parked my old Ford pickup on State Street, walked to the First Midwestern Bank ATM like I'd done thousands of times before. I wasn't even thinking about it. Just another errand. Another small step in a life that had been built on small, careful steps. I slid my debit card in, typed in my PIN, the same 4 digits I've known since the late 90s, and waited for the familiar word machine. The screen blinked once, then again. Insufficient funds. I stared at those words. They didn't make sense. I laughed nervously under my breath, hit cancel, and tried again. Same result. The woman behind me jingled her keys impatiently. I turned and muttered, "The machine must be broken." But it wasn't. When I switched to my savings card, the receipt printed instantly, crisp and brutal. Balance, $0. Last transaction, 9:07 a.m., full withdrawal. My heart pounded. My hands started to tremble. I whispered to myself, "That's not possible. I just checked last week. There were over 12,000 here. That was my life's work. My retirement. Every extra shift at the Caterpillar plant. Every time I packed a sandwich instead of buying lunch. Every dollar I tucked away instead of spending. 42 years of effort, gone." I stumbled into the bank, the heavy glass doors reflecting an old man I barely recognized. Inside, it smelled of carpet cleaner and coffee. Everything looked normal, but nothing was normal anymore. "Good afternoon, Mr. Bennett," said Tasha, the teller I'd known for years. My voice cracked. "Tasha, something's wrong with my accounts. The ATM says I have no money." She tapped on her keyboard, her smile fading. "Let me check." I stood there, praying. Then she turned the monitor toward me. "Mr. Bennett," she said gently, "there was a full withdrawal this morning, from both accounts, at 9:07. My mouth went dry. "By who?" She swallowed. "It shows as Lila Morales. She's listed as your joint account holder." "Lila, my daughter." Her name hit me like a hammer. I shook my head. "No, that can't be. She wouldn't, not Lila." "I'm sorry," Tasha said softly. She had full authorization. It was legitimate. I stared at the screen, but the numbers blurred. My whole life, every sacrifice, every plan, every ounce of security, stolen by the very person I had raised, protected, and loved more than anything. "Thank you," I whispered, gathering my cards. My legs barely carried me out the door. The afternoon sun felt harsh and unforgiving. I sat in my truck, gripping the steering wheel, shaking. My throat burned as I dialed Lila's number. 1 ring. 2. Voicemail. Again. 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 On the 6th try, she picked up. Her voice was flat, cold. "Dad, I know why you're calling." "Lila." I begged. "The bank said you took everything. That can't be right." "It's exactly right," she replied. "I took it all. Rafe and I are leaving. We're starting fresh." My hand went slick with sweat. "Sweetheart, that's my entire retirement. 42 years of saving. How am I supposed to live?" "You'll figure it out. You always do. Please, if you're in trouble, if you need something specific, we can talk about it. Come home. Bring Noah. We'll figure it out together." A harsh laugh crackled through the speaker. "There's nothing to figure out. I deserve this money more than you. I've been carrying everyone my whole life. Now it's my turn." I felt my chest tighten. "What about Noah? He's only 15. He has school, his friends. He can't just disappear like this." "He's with me. He'll adjust. Kids are resilient." My tears fell hot onto my hand. "Lila, when you divorced Jimmy, I paid your lawyer. When you couldn't make rent, I covered it. When Noah needed clothes, supplies, birthday parties, I made sure he had them. I gave you everything I could. And this is how you repay me. This is me paying you back, she sneered, by finally taking what I need. And then she said the words that ended it all. We're already 3 states away. Don't try to find us. The line went dead. When I called back, it went straight to voicemail. By the 3rd attempt, I got the cold voice of the automated operator. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. She had blocked me. I sat in my truck for what felt like hours. My life savings, my future, are gone. But worse than that, my daughter had betrayed me. This wasn't a stranger. This wasn't a scammer. This was a little girl who used to hold my hand at the park and say, "I love you, best of anyone, Daddy." And now she had left me with nothing. I drove through Rockford in a daze, past the diner where I used to take Noah for pancakes, past the hardware store where I bought tools with money carefully saved, past the ice cream parlor where I once celebrated Lila's 10th birthday with a banana split bigger than her head. When did that little girl disappear? I pulled into Riverside Park, the same park where I had taught her to ride a bike. I sat on the old bench facing the pond, the one where she used to feed ducks with her tiny hands. I could still hear her voice. "Not too big, Daddy. The little ducks can't eat big pieces." Tears blurred my vision. Where had that child gone? The one who once looked at me with pure trust. How did she become the cold voice that told me she deserved my life savings more than I did? I pressed my hands against my face and whispered, "What am I supposed to do now?" The ducks offered no answer. Eventually, I drove home. My key shook in the lock. Inside, everything looked normal. Noah's backpack by the door, his chessboard still set up on the table. But nothing was normal anymore. I stood in the living room, staring at the photographs on the mantelpiece. Lila's graduation, her wedding, our Christmas mornings together. Moments when I thought I was building a family that would always stick together. Now, I had to tell Noah the truth, that his mother had stolen from me, that she had abandoned him, that she had chosen a criminal over her own family. I looked at the stairs, knowing in a few minutes Noah would come down expecting homework, help, and dinner. How do you tell a 15-year-old boy that his mother has betrayed him? How do you shatter a child's world in one conversation? That was the weight pressing on my chest as I waited in silence. I sat in my armchair, staring at the front door, waiting for Noah to come downstairs. My heart pounded like a drum. He thought it was just another Tuesday evening. But I knew nothing would ever be the same again. How do you tell your grandson that the person who gave him life just destroyed everything? That was the question I carried into the night. I sat in my old armchair that evening, staring at the chessboard Noah had left on the kitchen table. The pawns were still mid-battle, the knights positioned like soldiers frozen in time. He'd gone upstairs after school, believing tonight would be like every other Tuesday night. Homework, dinner, maybe a little chess before bed. But I knew better. Nothing was ever going to be normal again. The wall clock ticked, loud and steady, filling the silence. Every sound in the house seemed exaggerated. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint footsteps above me as Noah moved around his room, the distant music from his video game. I sat there rehearsing words, trying to find a way to tell him the truth. Your mother emptied our accounts. She's gone. She chose a criminal over us. Every version I practiced sounded either too harsh or too vague. How do you shatter a boy's world without breaking him? I looked around the living room, a room that had seen birthday parties, Christmas mornings, and countless evenings of quiet routines. Now, it felt hollow, almost mocking. The family photographs on the mantel stared down at me like evidence from another life. The largest frame was from Lila's wedding 13 years ago. She was radiant in her white lace gown. I wore my only good suit, smiling with pride as I walked her down the aisle. Back then, I believed in happy endings. But that marriage lasted 3 years before it crumbled under the weight of Paul's drinking and cruelty. I can still remember the morning that changed everything. October 15th, 2012. I'd been reading the paper over coffee when the doorbell rang. Lila stood on the porch with 3-year-old Noah clinging to her leg. Her left eye was swollen shut, purple and angry. "Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Paul hit me again. Please, can we stay here?" The word again sliced through me like a knife. How many times had there been an again that I never knew about? Of course, I said yes. I always said yes. They stayed. I cooked meals. I paid the lawyer when she filed for divorce. I covered rent when she tried to move into her own apartment. Every time she needed rescuing, I rescued her. At the time, it felt like love, like what a father was supposed to do. But sitting in that chair years later, I realized I hadn't been helping her. I had been teaching her. Teaching her that she could always take from me without consequence. That my sacrifices were endless. That love meant enabling, not accountability. And now she has taken it all. I leaned back and closed my eyes, memories flooding. Her 10th birthday. Just the two of us at the ice cream shop on Elm Street, because her mother had already started pulling away. She ordered a banana split bigger than her head and declared, "Best birthday ever, Daddy." She had smiled at me with such pure joy that I would have emptied my pockets just to keep that look on her face forever. High school graduation. Lila in her cap and gown, standing at the podium as valedictorian. She spoke about hard work, dedication, and the bright future ahead. My father taught me that with perseverance, anything is possible, she said, pointing me out in the crowd. The gym erupted in applause, and I cried harder than I'd ever admit. The father-daughter dance at her wedding. She leaned in close and whispered, "Thanks for always being there. Dad, I don't know what I'd do without you." And I had believed her, every word. But now, those same memories felt poisoned. Every rescue, every bailout, every sacrifice had been lessons I didn't know I was teaching. Lessons in entitlement. Lessons in exploitation. I hadn't raised a daughter who understood gratitude. I had raised someone who believed my love was a blank check. And the final bill had come due. I looked at the photograph again. Lila's smile, Paul's arm around her. He had been a taker, too, just in his own way. His taking came with fists and control. Mine came with unconditional giving. And between the two of us, we had taught her the same thing. That she didn't have to be accountable for anything. Upstairs, Noah's footsteps crossed the floor. The squeak of his desk chair. The faint click of a keyboard. The flush of the toilet. The small sounds of an ordinary teenager living an ordinary life. But how could I tell him that ordinary was gone? That the mother who had given him life had chosen to abandon him for stolen money and a criminal boyfriend? I imagined his face. The confusion. The hurt. Maybe even anger at me for not stopping her. My heart ached at the thought. I walked into the kitchen, trying to busy myself. I ground coffee beans even though I didn't need coffee. The sharper filled the silence for a moment, but when it stopped, the house felt heavier than before. The kitchen table sat waiting, its 4 chairs like ghosts. Noah's spot by the window where he did his homework. My place at the head. And across from me, the empty seat where Lila had sat just months earlier introducing her new boyfriend, Rafe. "Dad, this is Rafe. He's really special to me." I knew instantly something was wrong. The leather jacket, the tattoos crawling up his neck, the way his eyes cataloged every corner of my home. He smiled when he asked about my pension, my accounts, and my security system. My gut screamed at me that he was dangerous, and I ignored it because Lila looked happy. And I didn't want to be an overprotective father again. I ignored it, and it cost me everything. I rinsed my cup at the sink, staring out the window at the quiet street. Neighbors drove by, waving, living their normal lives. None of them knew that inside this house, my world had collapsed. I leaned against the counter, breathing heavily, fighting the urge to smash the cup against the wall. Instead, I whispered to myself, "You failed her. You failed Noah. You failed everyone." The guilt pressed down like lead. Then I heard it. "Grandpa." Noah's voice, drifting down from the stairs. Casual, warm. The voice of a boy who believed the world was still safe. My heart skipped. "Yes, son, I'll be down in 5 minutes. Just saving my homework file." I swallowed hard. "Take your time." I tried to steady myself, but the weight of what I had to say felt unbearable. The clock ticked louder. Each second was a countdown. 5 minutes. That was all the time I had left before I had to tell him the truth. I paced the living room, practicing lines in my head. Son, your mother took the money and ran away. Too harsh. Micah, we need to talk about some changes. Too vague. Your mom made some choices that affect us. Too soft. Nothing worked. Every version ended with his heartbreak. Then the sound I had been dreading. The creak of the top step. His sneakers on the stairs. My chest tightened. I braced myself. Noah came into view, his usual easy stride carrying him into the room. His face calm, steady. He sat down on the couch beside me without being asked, like he already knew this wasn't a casual conversation. I reached for his hand, my voice trembling. Son, I need to tell you something important about your mother. But before I could finish, he looked at me with those calm brown eyes and said the words that stopped me cold. Grandpa, I already know. I froze, my mouth hanging open, the words caught in my throat. He knew? My 15-year-old grandson knew? And the look on his face wasn't confusion or fear. It was something else entirely. Something I hadn't expected. Determination. When my grandson looked me dead in the eye and said, Grandpa, I already know, I swear my whole world tilted sideways. For hours I've been agonizing over how to break the truth to him, rehearsing sentences that all sounded like hammer blows. And here he was, 15 years old, sitting calm as a summer morning, telling me he already knew his mother had stolen every cent I had. My voice caught. What do you mean, you already know? Noah didn't flinch. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, like a grown man preparing to deliver bad news to me. Mom took the money. She left with Rafe. I knew before you did. The words landed heavy, but his calmness made them even heavier. I stammered. How could you possibly know that? When he shifted in his seat, his young face set in a way that made him look older than he was. Monday night. I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs for water and heard them talking in Mom's room. The door was cracked open. They were whispering about your bank accounts, about leaving early, about getting away clean. My stomach knotted. Monday night. 24 hours before she drained me dry. Have you heard of them? He nodded. Every word. I leaned back, covered my face with both hands. And you carried that all day yesterday? Went to school, did your homework, ate dinner with me, like nothing was wrong. Yes. My hands dropped, and I searched his eyes. He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't afraid. He was steady, deliberate. Why didn't you tell me, Noah? He drew in a breath, and when he answered, his voice had the kind of clarity you don't expect from a boy his age. Because I knew what you'd do. You would have tried to talk Mom out of it. You would have begged her to stay. And she would have taken advantage of you again. Maybe not today, but soon. I didn't want to give her that chance. The truth of it stung like salt on an open wound. He was right. That's exactly what I would have done. Before I could respond, he stood up, walked to the front door, and picked up his backpack. He unzipped the largest pocket and pulled out a thick manila folder. Come here, he said, motioning me toward the coffee table. I obeyed like a student summoned by a teacher. He spread the folder open with careful precision. The first page was a grainy black and white printout, a mugshot, a man with a hard face, tattoos curling up his neck, and a crooked smirk. Above the photo in bold letters, wanted. My blood ran cold. That's him. That's Rafe. Noah tapped the page with his finger. His real name is Rafe Dalton. He's wanted for armed robbery. Last week, he held up a convenience store in Belvedere. I printed this from the police department's website. I stared at the flyer, my mouth dry. The same man who had sat in my kitchen, smiling while he asked about my pension, was wanted for armed robbery. Noah flipped to the next page. It was covered in his handwriting, neat, careful notes like the ones he used in school for history assignments. After I heard them Monday night, I couldn't sleep. I looked up everything I could about Rafe. Articles, arrest records, old cases. He's been in trouble for years. Robbery, fraud, assault. Always finds women like Mom. Women he can use. I traced the notes with my eyes. Stunned. He had dates of arrests, case numbers, even newspaper clippings taped to page. He'd done a more thorough job investigating this man than I ever had. You did all this by yourself? I asked quietly. Yes, he said simply, and I know exactly where they went. My head snapped up. What do you mean? He pulled out another sheet, a hand-drawn map with an address written in block letters at the bottom. 1137 North Linden Court, apartment 2B, Columbus. I heard Mom say it Monday night. She told Rafe she had a friend who'd rent them a place near Ohio State. As soon as I got back to my room, I wrote the address down. Yesterday at school, I looked it up in the computer lab. It's real. An apartment complex near campus. I stared at him, my mouth open. How do you remember all this? He shrugged, like it was the simplest thing in the world. I wrote everything down right away. Details disappear if you don't catch them fast. I sat back, stunned. My 15-year-old grandson had run his own investigation while I was still stumbling around in shock. I looked at him with tears burning my eyes. Why, Noah? Why go through all this alone? His expression softened. Because I had to protect you. You spent years protecting me, Grandpa, always making sure I had food, clothes, and help with school. You've been the one who's always here. But you never protected yourself from Mom. Someone had to do it. The words pierced me. For years, I had been so focused on saving my daughter that I hadn't realized my grandson was watching me get used, watching me lose. And now, he was stepping in to shield me. I whispered, "You shouldn't have to carry this at 15. He smiled sadly. Maybe not, but I wasn't about to just let her destroy you. Then he reached for the last page in a folder and slid it across the table. It was a small slip of paper with a number written in his careful script. What's this? I asked. A confirmation number. For what? I called the police tip hotline this morning before school. I gave them Rafe's name, the address, and the car they're driving. Everything. That's the number they gave me to confirm the call. I stared at the paper. My chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. You turned them in? Yes, Noah said firmly. I wanted them caught with the money before they could disappear. I pressed my hands to my face. While I had spent the day wandering in shock, drowning in memories and loss, this boy had acted. He had done what I couldn't. When I looked at him again, his eyes weren't just calm. They were resolute. You're braver than I ever was. I whispered. I learned from you, he said softly. You taught me to protect my family. I just did a different way. The room fell quiet. For the first time that day, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we weren't broken beyond repair. But then it happened. The sharp, jarring sound of the phone, ringing cut through the silence. The old black rotary on the side table buzzed like a hornet, loud and insistent. Noah's eyes flicked to mine. That's her. I swallowed hard, my hand hovering over the receiver. It could be Lila, furious, desperate, or it could be the police calling about the tip. Either way, answering would change everything. I looked at Noah, and he gave me the smallest nod. Go ahead, Grandpa, he said quietly. My hand trembled as I reached for the receiver. My grandson's evidence still spread across the table between us. The phone kept ringing, louder, sharper, demanding to be answered. Who was on the other end? My daughter or the law? I picked it up. Hello? I lifted the receiver with a hand that wouldn't stop trembling. The sound of the rotary phone always reminded me of simpler times, when phone calls brought good news, neighbors checking in, or a friendly voice on the other end. But not tonight. Tonight, the ring sounded like a summons to war. Hello? My voice cracked. For a second, only the noise of traffic filled my ear, the low hum of cars, maybe a truck's air brakes. Then, sharp and cutting, came her voice. Dad, how could you do this to me? Lila, I closed my eyes. Just hearing her tone was enough to twist a knife in my chest. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't apologizing. She was enraged. What are you talking about? I asked cautiously. Don't play dumb with me, she snapped. Titus is in jail. They took everything. The police showed up like they knew exactly where to find us, where we were staying, what we were driving. Someone tipped them off. It was you, wasn't it? You called them. I felt Noah's presence before I saw him. He had risen from the couch, standing silently beside me, his eyes locked on mine. His folder of evidence was still spread across the coffee table, his neat handwriting proof of the truth I couldn't reveal. If I told her Noah had been the one, she'd never forgive him. She would pour every ounce of her fury onto him, even from a distance. I couldn't do that to him. So I made a choice. Yes, I said firmly. I called them. The line went quiet, long enough for my own pulse to sound like thunder in my ears. Then her voice returned, low but seething. I can't believe you would turn your own daughter over to the police. Your own flesh and blood. My grip tightened on the receiver. You stole my life savings, Lila. Every cent I had. What did you expect me to do? It was just sitting there, she spat. You weren't using it. You don't need $12,000 sitting in some dusty account while you rot away in that little house. I deserved a chance at real life. Titus could have given me that. By robbing stores and scamming old people, my voice rose despite myself. By dragging you and Noah into a life of crime, that's not real life. Lila, that's destruction. Behind me, I felt Noah's hand rest lightly on my shoulder. He didn't say a word, but that silent touch was enough to steady me. She laughed bitterly. You've ruined everything. This was my chance. My one shot at happiness. And you destroyed it. No, Lila, I said quietly. You destroyed it yourself when you chose a fugitive over your own family. You don't understand, she hissed. Titus isn't who you think he is. He's been through a lot. He's trying to change. I looked at Noah, and we both thought the same thing. She was repeating excuses we'd heard before. She said the same about Paul, back when she'd sworn he was just stressed that he'd stop hitting her. People can change, I said, but Rafe isn't changing. He's using you, and you let him. For a moment, her tone shifted. Less rage, more desperation. I'm stranded, Dad. The police took the money. Titus is gone. I have nothing. Nowhere to go. No way to buy food or even a bus ticket. There it was, the familiar angle, the manipulation I had fallen for so many times. She was baiting the same hook, expecting me to bite like always. Then you should have thought about that, I said slowly, before you stole from your family. You can't just abandon me, she cried. I'm your daughter. And Noah is your son. I shot back, my voice suddenly steeling. The boy you left without a word. The boy you would have dragged into danger without thinking twice. You didn't care about him when you walked out that door. Her breathing was heavy, ragged. He's 15. He'll be fine. He's a child, Lila. He needs stability. He needs love. And you prove you can't give him either. The silence stretched long and painful. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold, sharp as glass. Fine. Don't expect to hear from me again. No calls, no visits, nothing. You'll never see me again. Not ever. Not even if I have more children. The ultimatum landed heavy, designed to wound me in the deepest place. But for the first time in my life, it didn't work. I glanced at Noah. He was watching me intently, his eyes filled with something that looked a lot like pride. If that's your choice, I told her softly, then so be it. The door will be open if you ever want to make things right. But I won't enable you anymore. I won't feed your destruction. Not again. Her voice cracked, rising into a scream. Save your lectures. You've chosen money over your daughter. I gritted my teeth. No, I've chosen Noah over your lies. The line went dead. I stood there holding the receiver, the dial tone buzzing like a flat line. Noah's arms wrapped around me from behind. I dropped the phone back into its cradle and held on to him like he was the only thing anchoring me to this world. For a long time, neither of us said a word. The living room felt impossibly quiet, filled only with the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. My daughter was gone, maybe forever, but my grandson was here, solid, steady, unshakable. And in that moment, I realized the truth. I hadn't lost everything. Not as long as I still had him. As we stood there in the silence, the phone sat on the side table, dark and still, but my mind kept racing. Had I just ended my relationship with my daughter forever? Or had I finally taken the first step towards saving what was left of my family? Either way, Nothing would ever be the same. After the line went dead, I just stood there, staring at the phone like it was an enemy I'd finally defeated. My hand still clutched the receiver, even though the dial tone had long gone flat. My daughter's voice, full of rage and manipulation, still echoed in my ears. It was Noah who broke the silence. He slipped his arms around me from behind, holding me tighter than I ever thought a 15-year-old boy could. "It's okay, Grandpa," he whispered. "You did the right thing." I swallowed hard. My throat felt like sandpaper. I don't feel like I did. I feel like I just lost her forever. He let go, came around to face me, his eyes calm but sad. "She lost herself a long time ago. You just stopped letting her drag you down with her." His words hit me with more wisdom than I'd heard from most adults in my life. And in that moment, I realized my grandson was no longer just a boy. He was stepping into a role I had never expected him to: protector, truth-teller, partner. We sat back down on the couch, the folder of evidence still spread across the table between us. The mugshot of Rafe Dalton stared up at us, that crooked smirk mocking the wreckage he had helped cause. I pushed the papers aside and rubbed my eyes. Noah was the first to speak. "Grandpa, are we going to be okay?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The boy deserved honesty. He'd earned it. "I don't know, son. Your mom took everything I had in those accounts. Every dollar I saved from 42 years at the plant. That's gone." He bit his lip, his voice small but steady. "So what about groceries? The bills? The house? Do we have enough of that?" I felt a sharp stab in my chest. No 15-year-old should have to worry about utility bills or whether there be food on the table. That was my burden to carry, not his. And yet here he was, carrying it anyway. I reached over, squeezed his shoulder. "Don't you worry about that. We'll make it. I promise." But promises felt thin when my bank accounts were empty. And then, like a light bulb, I remembered. I stood suddenly, startling Noah. "Wait here." "Grandpa, what is it?" "Something I should have told you about a long time ago." I walked up the stairs, my legs moving with new purpose. My bedroom was dim, the late evening sun casting long shadows across the dresser and bed. I knelt down, reached under the frame, and pulled out the heavy gray fireproof box I'd hidden years earlier. It scraped against the wood floor as I dragged it into the light. My fingers found the small key tucked behind the framed photo of Noah's grandmother. With a click, the lock is released. When I lifted the lid, the faint smell of old paper and ink wafted up. Inside were neat stacks of bills, 20s, 50s, a few hundreds, each bound with rubber bands. My secret emergency fund. I carried the box downstairs. Noah's eyes widened as I sat on the coffee table between us. "What's that?" he asked. I sat down, my hand steady for the first time all day. "This is what my grandfather taught me. Never keep all your eggs in one basket." I didn't trust Lila enough to give her access to everything. So every month, for the past 2 years, I've set aside a little cash. Not much, just enough to keep us alive if the worst happened. I began stacking the bills on the table, counting aloud. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Noah leaned closer, his eyes wide. By the time I finished, we had a dozen neat piles across the table. "That's $3,000 for $180, I announced. Noah's jaw dropped. "You mean we're not broke?" "Not completely," I said with a smile. "We've got a cushion, enough to cover groceries, utilities, and a little breathing room while I figure out what comes next." Relief flooded his face, and for the first time in days, I saw him look like a kid again. He let out a laugh that was half nervous, half joyous. "You've been hiding this the whole time?" "Not hiding," I corrected. "Protecting. Your mother didn't know about it. I kept it that way on purpose." He leaned back against the couch, exhaling deeply. "Grandpa, that's incredible. You saved us." I chuckled softly. "I guess I did. But you saved us first, Noah. You were brave enough to act when I couldn't." He gave me a small smile. "Guess we're a team, huh?" "The best one," I said firmly. We packed the money back into the box carefully, stack by stack. I relocked it and slid the key back into its hiding spot. When it was done, The weight in my chest felt lighter. For the first time since I saw that ATM receipt, I didn't feel like the world was collapsing. We weren't rich. We weren't out of danger. But we weren't ruined, either. Noah grabbed the chess set from the cabinet, grinning. So, want to finish the game we started? The normalcy of the suggestion nearly made me cry. Yes, I said, my voice thick. I'd like that very much. He began setting up the pawns and knights, humming softly to himself. For a brief, beautiful moment, the house felt like a home again. But peace never lasts long, does it? Just as Noah placed the final rook on the board, the shrill ring of the phone split the silence. We both froze. The old black rotary on the side table rattled as it rang, louder and louder. The sound stabbed through our fragile calm. Noah's eyes flicked to mine. Do you think it's her again? I shook my head slowly. Could be, or it could be the police. The phone rang again, and again. I reached for the receiver, my hand hovering over it. Noah's voice was barely above a whisper. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. I lifted the receiver, my grandson's hand resting on the table beside mine, his steady presence reminding me I wasn't alone. Hello, I said, bracing myself. The voice on the other end answered, and everything shifted again. The receiver felt heavy in my hand as I lifted it. Noah's steady gaze locked on mine. Hello, I said, my voice tight. For a moment there was only static. Then a calm, professional voice spoke. Mr. Bennett, this is Detective Harris with the Columbus Police Department. I'm calling regarding a tip we received this morning. Noah sat forward on the couch, his eyes wide. Yes, I managed. My throat was dry. I wanted to inform you personally. We apprehended a suspect earlier today. A man by the name of Rafe Dalton. He was taken into custody without incident. He's facing charges for armed robbery, fraud, and several outstanding warrants. Relief rushed through me like a wave, almost strong enough to knock me over. I gripped the phone tighter. You got him? Yes, sir. And I believe you're aware that your daughter, Lila Morales, was with him at the time of the arrest. My chest tightened again. Is she? She was questioned and released. For now. The detective's tone turned heavier. We have evidence of her involvement in the financial theft, but as the accounts were joint, it complicates matters. We'll be in touch as we continue the investigation. I closed my eyes. Relief and sorrow twisted together. My daughter wasn't behind bars, but the law hadn't cleared her either. She was still out there, still angry, still dangerous in her own way. Thank you, Detective, I said quietly. One more thing, Mr. Bennett. There's a chance some of the stolen funds can be recovered. Not all, but some. We'll update you when we know more. My knees nearly buckled. I steadied myself against the wall. I appreciate that. He gave me a number to call for updates, then ended the conversation. I lowered the receiver slowly back into its cradle. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at it like it might ring again with worse news. Then Noah's voice cut through the silence. So, what did they say? I turned to him. They got him. Rafe's in jail. The boy's face lit up, relief flooding his features. We did it. I sank down onto the couch beside him, exhausted. You did it, Noah. You're the one who turned him in. You're the one who gave him the address. He smiled a little, shy but proud. I just wanted to protect you. I put an arm around his shoulders and pulled him close. You did more than that. You protected us both. You saved what's left of this family. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt like I could breathe. The air in the room didn't feel as heavy. The future didn't look quite so hopeless. We set the chess pieces back up on the board. The pawns clinked softly against the wood as Noah placed them in their rows. He looked almost like his old self again, a kid, not a soldier carrying burdens too big for his age. I sipped the coffee that had gone cold, but I didn't mind. Cold or not, it tasted like stability, like normalcy. We played in silence for a while, the comfort of routine wrapping around us like a blanket. Each move of the pieces felt like a step back into ordinary life. But peace never lasts long. Halfway through the game, just as Noah trapped my knight with a clever move, a sound jolted us both upright. Knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp raps against the front door. We froze. The sound echoed to the quiet house, louder than it should have been. My heart skipped. Visitors at this hour were rare. Unexpected ones, even rarer. Noah looked at me, his eyes wide. "Grandpa, do you think it's her?" I didn't answer right away. The possibility hung in the air like smoke. Another knock, louder this time. I rose slowly from my chair, my legs heavy. "Stay here," I told him. "No," he said firmly, standing too. "We face it together, remember?" There was again that steel in his voice. He wasn't just a boy anymore. I moved toward the door, each step slow, deliberate. My hand hovered over the deadbolt. I thought about Detective Harris's words, about Rafe in jail, about Lila, angry and desperate, released but not free. What if she was standing on the other side of this door right now? What if she'd come back, not for reconciliation, but for revenge? The knocking stopped. Silence. Then a voice. "Mr. Bennett, this is Detective Harris." I froze, my hand on the lock. The voice was muffled but clear, authoritative. Noah moved closer, whispering. It could be her pretending. My heart pounded. He was right. For all I knew, it wasn't the police at all. The voice came again, firmer this time. "Mr. Bennett, please open the door. We need to talk." I stood there in the hallway, Noah at my side, my hand gripping the deadbolt. On the other side of the door, someone waited. Maybe the detective, maybe my daughter. Either way, opening it could change everything. I took a deep breath, staring at the knob, and then slowly I turned it. The deadbolt clicked under my hand, echoing louder than it should have in the quiet house. My heart hammered like a drum in my chest. Noah stood just behind me, his presence steady, like a soldier at my back. I cracked the door open a few inches. On the porch stood a man in a dark jacket, badge clipped to his belt, flashlight in hand. His face was tired but alert, professional. "Mr. Bennett?" "Detective Harris, Columbus PD." Relief loosened the knot in my chest, but only slightly. I opened the door wider, though not fully. Old instincts told me to keep barriers up now. "Detective," I said, my voice rough. "You called earlier." "Yes, sir. I wanted to update you in person." His eyes flicked past me, catching sight of Noah at my shoulder. "Mind if we step inside?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come on in." He walked into the living room, his boots heavy against the floor. His eyes scanned the room quickly. The chessboard on the table, the photographs on the mantel, the manila folder still open. Then he focused back on me. "We've got Rafe Dalton in custody. He won't be seeing daylight for a long time." I nodded. "Good. That's good." Noah crossed his arms. "What about my mom?" The detective's expression softened. "Your mother wasn't charged tonight, but that doesn't mean she's clear. We have reason to believe she knowingly aided Dalton. If evidence surfaces, and it might, she could still face charges." My chest tightened again. Part of me wanted her locked up, forced to face the consequences. Another part, the stubborn father in me, still hoped she'd find her way back. Harris continued. "As for the money, we recovered just over $6,000 in cash from Dalton's possession. Some of that matches the withdrawal amount from your accounts. It's being held as evidence for now, but there's a strong chance it will be returned to you." I nearly sank into my chair from relief. Half my savings wasn't all of it, but it was something, more than I dared hope for this morning. "Thank you, Detective," I said, my voice shaking. He nodded once. "You did the right thing tipping us off." My eyes flicked to Noah, and I quickly covered. "Yeah, just doing what needed to be done." Harris handed me a card. "If your daughter contacts you, or if you hear from Dalton's associates, call me, day or night. These people don't let go easily." That last warning sat heavy in the air. "Understood," I said quietly. When he left, the house fell silent again. I locked the door, slid the chain across, and leaned my forehead against the wood for a long breath. Behind me, Noah whispered, "We're really going to be okay, aren't we?" I turned to him, my chest aching with love and sorrow all tangled together. "Yeah, Son, we are, not because of the money, not because of the police, but because we've got each other. He stepped closer, his face serious. She'll probably try to come back, you know. I know, I admitted, and when she does, we'll decide how to handle it together. Later that night, after Noah had gone upstairs, I sat alone in my armchair. The chessboard was still set up mid-game, the pawns frozen in their endless march forward. The mantle of photographs glowed softly in the lamplight. Weddings, birthdays, Christmas mornings. Smiles from a family that didn't exist anymore. I thought about my daughter, wherever she was. Maybe in some dingy motel room. Maybe sitting alone at a bus stop, angry at me, angry at the world, angry at herself most of all. I thought about how many times I'd rescued her. How many times I'd said yes when I should have said no. How many times I'd taught her the wrong lessons. But when I looked at the stairs, at the backpack left on a landing, at the faint sound of Noah brushing his teeth, I realized something else. I hadn't failed completely, because that boy was growing into a man stronger than I'd ever been at his age. Smarter, braver, more clear-eyed. He hadn't inherited his mother's blindness. He hadn't fallen for easy lies. He had stood up when I couldn't, and that meant there was still hope. I stood, walked to the mantel, and picked up the oldest photograph there, one of Lila as a little girl, maybe 3 years old. She was at Riverside Park, holding a piece of bread for the ducks, her small hand clutching mine. Her eyes were full of innocence, trust, and love. I don't know where you went, I whispered to the photo. I don't know how to get you back, but I can't lose myself trying anymore. I set the picture back down and turned toward the stairs. From now on, I murmured, it's me and Noah, and that's enough. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. The world outside looked the same. Kids riding bikes, neighbors watering lawns, the mailman on his usual route. But inside me, everything had changed. Noah came downstairs, backpack slung over his shoulder, ready for school. He looked at me with a smile that reminded me of something his mother once had, long ago, before bitterness stole it away. Are you ready for breakfast? I asked. He grinned. Depends. Is it oatmeal again? Maybe, I teased. He groaned, rolling his eyes, and for just a moment, everything felt normal, ordinary, beautifully, painfully ordinary. And I knew then that ordinary was more precious than all the money in the world. So that's my story. The story of how my daughter stole everything I had, and how my grandson gave me everything I needed. Love, loyalty, courage. I lost one family that day, but I found another in the same house. Smaller, maybe, but stronger. Sometimes blood betrays you, but sometimes blood saves you too. And in the end, it's not the money that matters. It's who's sitting across the chessboard, moving the pawns with you, promising you're not alone. The phone sat silent that morning, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way forever. Someday it will ring again. And when it does, I'll be ready. Because this time, I'm not facing it alone. You know, I've carried this story in silence for a long time, like an old scar hidden beneath a sleeve. It was easier to cover than to explain. But silence can turn heavy, like stones in a pocket. And I suppose tonight, I just got tired of carrying them. Sometimes we tell our stories not because we want pity, but because we want someone out there to know they aren't walking alone in the dark. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever watched someone you love drift into shadows, I hope you hear me clearly. It isn't the end. It may feel like everything has been stolen, but life still leaves you one precious thing, the chance to begin again. Legacy, I've learned, isn't built from the wealth we save, or the photographs we hang on the mantle. It's in the people who sit across from us, the ones who still choose to stay, the ones who move the pawns on the chessboard, and whisper, "You're not alone, Grandpa." That is the inheritance worth leaving. Not money, not property, but love that doesn't break when the world does. So if this story reached you, if it stirred something in that quiet place behind your ribs, do me a kindness. Leave a comment. Let me know what time it is where you are. Tap that like button so the story can travel farther. And if you want to hear more, subscribe, not just for me, but for every survivor who deserves to be heard. As for me, I've been Harold Bennett all my life. But tonight, as I close this chapter, I think I'll just be Grandpa, a man who lost much, but found enough to keep going. And so I leave you with this. When the storm passes and the pieces of your life lie scattered, pick them up gently and build something new, because even broken glass can catch the light again. Good night, my friends. Until we meet again.